Going live, going live, going live. Live. Oh, yeah. We are going live. All right. Let's see how long it takes for us to actually catch up. Yay. I can now hear myself, I think. All right. So there's the audio. Very good, very good. Good evening to everyone who is already here. It's great to see y'all. All right. So, hope everyone is having a fantastic evening or morning, day, wherever you're at. Yeah, we're going to do a quick live stream tonight. In part because won't be able to do it tomorrow since I'm leaving on a jet plane. I do know when I'll be back again next week. Yeah, I'm taking the opportunity to go visit my one of my sisters and her husband, and it's going to be a fun trip. So tonight, what I want to do is I want to just get a little bit more ranting and raving out of the way when it comes to Star Wars: The Acolyte, because holy cow, there's still more I feel that needs to be said about this travesty. And then we are going to address one of the requests from the community post that went up this afternoon, asking that we have a look at film adaptations of books, good and bad ones. And I think that's going to be a whole lot of fun. If you've seen the thumbnail with Howl's Moving Castle, yes, we are going to be talking about Howl's Moving Castle because that is a great film adaptation despite all of the liberties taken with the canon. So so it is indeed possible to have a good adaptation that deviates from the book. And then there are other stories that do a fantastic job of capturing what's in the book. And then there's other stories that just, you're like, wait, what? What did you just do? And so we are going to try to cover all of that. And then hopefully before we end, answer any writing questions that you guys are able to put there into the chat. So that is the basic outline of the things that I want to talk about and do tonight. As Ruby Lover 101 says, rage. Oh, yes, there will be a little bit of raging here. ISO, hey there, welcome. And we do indeed have a good morning. So that is fantastic. All right. So let's dive into this and let's get the unpleasantness on out of the way. Star Wars: The Acolytes. Now then, there are people who enjoy the show, and that's absolutely fine. And I'm not even going to be all like, your taste is awful. If you like what you like, then you like what you like. And I am not going to tell anyone that they are an idiot or that they've got bad taste or anything like that for liking The Acolytes. And there are things about Star Wars as The Acolytes that, taken at face value, I believe, are actually fine. And there are some action scenes that, with just a little bit more work, could be really good. But there's just so much else that's got me kind of rolling my eyes. Ruby Lover says, no, tell them they have bad taste. It was hot garbage. Yes, it was hot garbage, but you know what? I can't go into a bookstore and tell everyone in the romance section that they have bad taste because they are consuming tons of smut. So, I mean, I could, but then the arguments that would ensue wouldn't get us anywhere, and I'd probably get kicked out of the bookstore because the bookstore needs these people to buy all of the smutty romances because that's one of the things that keeps bookstores afloat. But yes, The Acolyte episodes 1 and 2 were an absolute mess, an unmitigated disaster. And if the rumors for episode 3 are true, I am probably going to be like, okay then. We've definitely devolved into the realm of bad bad fan fiction where the Force, like people are like, oh, the Force is female. It's not just simply like, ooh, the Force is female, but rather that where the Acolyte is going is that it's meant to honestly take Anakin and Luke in retrospect and make them look absolutely ridiculous. And the reason for that is that because you have the witches of Dathomir who are able to, just using the Force, impregnate their members and give them these super Force babies who know the true value of the Force, that the Force isn't about light and dark, but it is about the power of the thread, and that those who can control the thread are the ones who are supposed to, well, whatever. And we're going to see exactly where they go with that. But the whole idea is that there is no good or bad, light or dark. There is only power. The Jedi are stupid. The Sith are stupid. And that it's ultimately these all-powerful witches who can break all of the rules with their knowledge of the Force. They are the true masters of the Force and the ones who truly understand the nature of the universe. And that flies in the face of Jedi and Sith dogma. And while it's actually not inherently a bad idea to have other people who have a different view of the Force, I actually think that's interesting. Where this is likely going to go off the rails is that if the dialogue and the logic and any of that in the first two episodes are an indicator of what we're going to get when it comes to the philosophy of the Force, it's going to be contradictory, it's going to be gobbledygook nonsense, and it's just going to be, what? What made you think that you guys could write philosophy? And I'll just say this, as someone who studied philosophy is a little bit hard to write. Philosophy is fun to engage in, because if you know what you're doing when it comes to arguing philosophy, you can justify murder, which is why I do not recommend anyone ever studying philosophy. And so here we got people like it, it's fine, but I will still continue the hating. Like people say it twice. I'm Omega. My parents watched it the other day, but I have had yet to watch myself. Iso says, I just told somebody today that I enjoyed writing any genre besides romance, and she got a little offended. It was kind of disappointing for both of us, but also kind of funny. Yeah, there are those people who really do enjoy romance, and I totally get it for those who are not big into writing romance. And romance is difficult to write and to get right. It's very easy to write smut, and that's one of the reasons why a whole lot of people do it. But writing a good, genuine romance that resonates with people, that is uplifting, that is engaging, and then where people are like, wow, like I wish I could have that. Or I'm just so happy that these characters made it through all of that to get together. That's difficult to write. And so anyone who can write a good romance, they get an applause from me. And if anyone's wondering, okay, Lars, well, who are some authors that you would go to for writing a good romance? I'll be honest, I haven't found many. It's been a long time. I think, man, who would I say that there's an author that even wrote a romance where I was like, I really, really do enjoy that. Brandon Sanderson, as much as I love the guy, is not that great at writing romance. His best romances, though, that he has written, even though I do love Vin and Ellen getting together, and I love Shallan and Adolin, and that's because I approach anyone who really enjoys those relationships comes from the perspective of an absolute nerd who's like, oh, the nerd is getting noticed and the nerd is getting the hot guy or the hot girl. Yes, that's why people enjoy those romances. But Tress of the Emerald Sea and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter are two great examples from Brandon Sanderson of what can be done with a fun, engaging, interesting, drawn-out romance. And if you actually want a really funny romance, go watch The Fall Guy. That is a well done breakup story turned romance. And I don't want to spoil the movie here. If we get enough people who go to see the movie, we can then definitely have a discussion here on a live stream talking about The Fall Guy, because that movie is fantastic. So we got the question, people even see Star Wars? Yes. You know, interestingly enough, there's a lot of people who absolutely love Star Wars, but they just are not watching any of the Star Wars that's coming out right now. When I went to the Phoenix Fan Fusion, the fan bases that competed for the most popularity, and I mean hundreds of people dressing up as these characters, were Star Wars and Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer had so much representation there. There were so many people dressed up as, especially Inosuke, but also a lot of Tanjiros running around. When it came to the Star Wars group, there were scores of Mandalorians. There were tons of Jedi, and then a lot of people who are dressed up as some of the more iconic Star Wars aliens. No Darth Vaders this year. It was a little disappointing, at least the day that I went. Not everybody has the same type of romance. Some people are different. Absolutely. And that's another thing that makes romance difficult. Some people want the smut. Some people want the quick and fun romances. Some want the rom-coms. Some want the bittersweet romances. Some want the tragedies. Some people love the cheating. So there's all different kinds of romance stories. So speak for yourself. I literally cannot write anything too smutty without grimacing so hard I can't see the page. I can't even think about writing smut because I'm too busy trying not to vomit. It just does not resonate with me. And I can completely identify with that. If I ever try writing any sort of smut, like, it just kills me inside. There are those people who can do it, and there are just those people who can't. And you know what? You don't have to force yourself to do it. In some of my stories, especially like messing around in fan fiction to kind of experiment and see what I could do, I have tried, and I'm just like, oh, this just is not my style. This is not what I like. I personally love the more wholesome romance. So give me that. I don't mind writing intimate scenes. Intimacy is different than smut. Smut is just simply taking the act of love and just pumping it up to a ridiculous level to get people to blush and to keep turning the page. Intimacy, when written well, intimacy takes the act of romance, takes the act of love, and gives you just enough so that way people realize this is actually really good. Like this is the fulfillment of everything these characters have done to get to this point of how they've gotten to know each other, their communications, the mistakes they've made, how they've made it up to each other, the arguments they've had, all that kind of stuff. And how they've shown their love for each other, how they've supported each other, that has led us to this moment. This is the fulfillment of all that buildup. And that's intimacy. I have a question. What if Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen were made in America? What will be the difference if they were made in America? Unless they were made by the people who made Avatar: The Last Airbender, it would probably not be that good. And furthermore, they would not have the ideologies that drive Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen, because it is foreign to the way that Westerners think, especially to the way that Americans think. This is one of the things that, culturally speaking, most Americans, when commenting on issues about like stories from Japan, have no idea what they are talking about, because they don't understand Japanese culture or Japanese way of thinking or Japanese history. In fact, actually today I was just listening to a discussion about why people in the West love Japanese anime and Japanese movies so much, and they were saying it's because the Japanese are all about family. And I was so close to busting a gut laughing, because no. In fact, actually, there is a part of Japanese society that would remove you from your family. Your family is important in Japanese society, and within a certain context, family is the most important thing. But let's say that you are a working member of society. You are supposed to put your work before your family every day of the working week, because in Japanese culture and Japanese society, what is most important is where your allegiance first and foremost lies. And once you become a worker, an employee, your allegiance first and foremost lies with your company. And this is one of the things that has led to a lot of workers getting taken advantage of in Japan, because they are expected to be obedient. They are expected to comply. They're expected to work really hard. And so management does not have an incentive to treat them really well or provide good working environments. And yeah, it's not really healthy. Things are slowly changing in Japan in regards to that, but it is a part of their culture. It is something that has been embedded in them for hundreds of years. And I remember when I was researching that for my thesis about the Japanese Americans post World War II, discovering that, I was like, suddenly so much begins to make sense. And when you understand the whole idea of allegiances and of belonging, there's a ton of different things now in Japanese anime that makes total sense. Like why Ichigo and Naruto are always looked down on really early on, because they are the outsiders. They don't belong. And it's not like the loner here in America, where we actually look up to the loner. In Japanese culture, you look down on the loner. Or the person who sticks out. They're saying, translated to English, the nail gets the hammer. Any nail that sticks out gets smashed down. You must conform. You must belong. Otherwise, you don't belong within society, and we want you out. And so yeah, you then can also then understand why it gets really ridiculous, especially like in high school anime, where some characters are just like overly devoted to someone. You're like, dude, this person is toxic. Get a better friend. But within the Japanese framework of thinking, what's culturally acceptable, even if your leader or your buddy or your boss is an absolute jerkwad and is horrible, is toxic to be around, you have to be around them because you're a part of that group. Your allegiance is to that group. If you betray them, then you don't belong. And to not belong, it's one of the worst things you could do. And that's a concept of thinking that is 100% foreign to Westerners and especially to Americans. We need to video about culture, about the cultural differences. I would love to do a video discussing cultural differences and how those apply to storytelling. It is something, though, that would require definitely a good amount of research, maybe a little bit of peer review before we put it on up there, just to make sure that we are 100% accurate. But that is actually an excellent idea for understanding other people's stories, is to understand what culture, what background they come from, because where we grow up, who we grow up around, absolutely forms the stories that we tell. Just dominate me. Just dominate me already. Me disintegrates from cringe. So that is incredible. Yes, that is how most people would actually react in that situation, whether fictional or real. So, moving on. I actually said that we were going to talk about the things that the Acolyte gets wrong, and here we are talking about romance, which is actually great. It's a better topic than talking about the Acolyte. But let me bring up some things that the Acolyte just is like, what the heck is going on here? So, as you can see on the screen, we've got fights. Yay! This is something that needs to be understood about writing fights. Fights are about the build-up. If there's no build-up to a fight doesn't make much sense. There's no reason to really get invested or involved in it, no matter how flashy it is. We care about a fight because we care about the characters who are in that fight and because of the events that have brought us to that point. The only way that you can compensate for that lack of buildup is that there must be a ton of character in that fight, where we are getting to know a lot about this individual by the dialogue or the inner monologue, or by the way that they fight, the means that they have, what they lack, what they have, all of that. If you don't have a lot of character shining through, either through their wisecracks, their insults, their swears, the equipment that they have, whatever, all of these different things that go into it to make the fight feel bombastic, unique, and individual, again, no one cares. And then there are the consequences of that fight. The consequences must make sense. There must be actual consequences for whatever has happened. If you don't have proper consequences to your battle, then why did we even have it in the first place? And I really learned this actually by going to a panel once at Comic-Con. Well, the Arizona's Comic-Con, Fan Fusion, where it was supposed to be the greatest fights in all of anime. And one of the battles was definitely very bloody. It was very well animated, but I had no idea what was happening. All I could see was that there was a demon and a bear and a ton of samurai, and the samurai were all getting squished by the demon and the bear as they're fighting each other. It was cool, but I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea why they were fighting, and I had no idea what would happen afterwards. Then compare that to the one fight that the people on the panel actually introduced, which is from the Sword of the Stranger. They introduced the last fight for the Sword of the Stranger, and they said, so here we have the Stranger, who has been trying to help this young man who could be the Emperor's son get away from all of these assassins who are trying to kill him. And this is the moment where he faces off, and the assassin that he's going up against is actually from mainland Asia. Supposedly he's Chinese, but he could even be Russian. We're not exactly sure. And he speaks to the samurai in Chinese. Because he can't speak in Japanese, but so he then tries to show through his actions that he actually is being honorable to the samurai before he tries to kill him. And so knowing that, then watching the beginning of the battle, how there's this strange dialogue between them, the body language, and then they break out into this all-out amazing duel. It is so freaking good. Watch The Sword of the Stranger. That fight meant something to me. Watching the opening fight for the Acolyte, I have no idea who the Acolyte is. I have no idea who this Jedi is, and that's okay. You know, sometimes you open up a fight with a battle. I mean, what am I saying right here? Open up a fight with a battle. Sometimes you open up a book with a battle. Sometimes you open up a show or a movie with a fight, and that's absolutely fine. You then have to show really clearly who these characters are. I had no idea who the Acolyte was. There was no name. All I know is that I have unfinished business. She was so wooden. None of what she was doing makes any sense. And what the Jedi was doing didn't make sense either. And they were just so stoic and doing stupid Force Fu moves that made no sense. Especially when the Jedi has the Force and she could be throwing the Acolyte all over the place. The Acolyte's got the Force. Why aren't they actually using the Force to fight? I don't really know. So it was lackluster, and the Kung Fu did not actually communicate any idea of philosophy, which is something that's very important to the higher degrees of karate, Kung Fu fighting, of Krav Maga, and all of those different fighting styles. There's actually philosophies behind the styles that you use. None of that was communicated in their fighting style. It was just action for action's sake. And so because I have no idea who these characters are, there's no buildup, and the action was weak, while there were consequences, and those consequences are played out for the rest of episode 1 to episode 2, which is good, I was not invested. So I'm watching the consequences of a fight that I didn't care about play out for 2 episodes. And so when people are like, man, the action is so great, I'm like, no, the action sucks. And if you think that that's really good, I have a bunch of Kung Fu movies to show you that are way more action-packed and are actually done on a lower budget and don't have to rely on CGI and wires to do cool things. Okay, before I continue on my rant, let's see here. What we got TV account. What are your options or opinions, I guess, on but and therefore method? TV account, I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to say right there. What are your options on but and therefore method? If you could try to clarify that, I would appreciate that. Different regions of the world have different writing ways, like in the Middle East, Alibaba. I disagree with you. Some people just want fights, hand-to-hand magic, face in the fight. Cool, fine with them. The fight could symbolize the battle between philosophies. It could, but it doesn't really. It's if anyone says that there is a lot of meaning communicated in the first fight, you're giving it grace, and you're giving it you are the one who's actually imposing the meaning and the philosophy on it. Even later on in the episode, when you are introduced to the apprentice of the Sith Lord, who's like, the Acolyte kills without steel, kills without weapons. The Acolyte kills dreams. It's like, hello, she didn't actually kill the other Jedi by using the Force or using her cunning. She used steel little knives. She broke what she was supposed to do. So she actually isn't living up to the creed of the Acolyte, and she's not even killing any dreams. In fact, actually, as you pay attention through episodes 1 and 2, what she's doing is that she is effectively being the harbinger of a nightmare. And you're like, okay, well, what's the dream? And they say that the dream is the invincibility of the Jedi. But when you pay attention to what's happening throughout the show, you realize that the Jedi have no reason to feel invincible because they are a bunch of morons. They are so easily defeated and undone. If the Jedi believe that they are invincible and this is how they act, then they are willingly ignoring all of the Jedi who have to be dying day after day after day in ridiculous stunts. And it's even hinted that that's the case when one of the Jedi Masters at the temple is like, I can't let you go out into the field because I can't afford to lose you. Why would you say that if the Jedi were actually invincible and had done this great job of managing to sustain this myth? What this says is that there's tons of Jedi dying and that the Jedi are so pathetic that they're afraid of losing a master to their own patheticness, their own pathetic nature. TV count. The Philippines have way too many soap operas to the point that they drive me crazy. Yeah, soap operas are insane, TV account. I absolutely will agree with you there. I avoid daytime television because of soap operas. TV account. It's the method the writers on South Park use. It's really interesting. I find both simple and structured. I've been using it to outline my comics recently. And that's okay. And in fact, actually, the South Park writers are geniuses. I will say that outright. Is their humor exactly my cup of tea? No, I'll say personally it's not my cup of tea. But South Park continues to be a tour de force. It's been around all these years because it's a well-done show. Yes, it is cheap, but it is well written. You got to hand it to them. And if you think that it isn't well written, you just got to see what these guys have done when writing the Book of Mormon musical. A musical that is meant to tear into the Mormons, and at the same time, if you're actually paying attention, is a love letter to the Mormon church. It's really weird, but it is fantastic how they did it. Anyway, it takes real skill to tear someone a new one and at the same time tell them I love you. Brother, they are not geniuses. They say stuff after becoming safe to say it. Some people may say that. I would say that again, not exactly my cup of tea. But the Matt and Trey definitely what's the best way to put it? They in their own words, they actually said a few years back that they weren't going to go as hard as they once did, in part because reality had become so much like the fiction that they themselves have been writing that they felt that it would actually do a disservice to the story to go as wild as they could. And okay, I can understand that. I have heard other people say that they have lost a lot of the pizzazz and fire and flame that they used to have, and I definitely see that. But another part of that is that the world is no longer as shocked by South Park as it once was. It feels vanilla compared to what they once were like, and it's not so much because they've gone soft so much, but it's because we're now just so used. We're so used to that kinds of insanity on the television, in real life, in all kinds of entertainment that we consume. And that's actually one of the reasons why I don't spend too much time with South Park. Because again, just like with romance, I prefer to surround myself with more wholesome stuff. So let's see here. Example, Star Wars in the time they didn't say anything. I have heard people comment on that, and yet now everyone is quoting their Star Wars. There's, I should say, all of the commentators about Hollywood these days are now repeatedly quoting South Park. Whether they hate South Park or whether they love them and agree with them, everyone's now quoting them. It is what it is. If you don't like it, if you think that they're not as, don't think that they have as much bite as they should, okay, your opinion right there. If you could talk with Matt and Trey, I think that they would have some interesting insights for you. Bella Days, hey, welcome Bella Days. It's great to have you here. I'm Omega. Sometimes I would watch videos by a YouTuber, Lambo Calrissian, who breaks down fights from the perspective of a black dude. Warning, N-word use. Yeah, you know what, and that's going to happen. It all depends on, depends on the people. I mean, we had made the agreement way back in the day when we first started up Camille's Harem, our group, that we were going to try to keep it as PG-13 as possible. Like, we would not go beyond that, just because we wanted to be more accessible to everyone and not through our own word usage, our own vocabulary, push people away by making them feel too uncomfortable. But you know what? I really need to get back into doing proper fight analyses. It's been a long time since I've done one, and I think that the Acolyte deserves a good breakdown of, this is why this is absolutely a mess. So coming back to it, contradictions and mistakes. I'll end my little bit of vitriol right here because I've already talked about the stupidity of their pacing, their dialogue, the fact that these Jedi are absolutely stupid, their use of the Force is contradictory within the show itself, and all these other things. So let me talk about mistakes and contradictions. So here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with your characters making mistakes. When we look at the Jedi Master Soul, the guy's making mistakes left and right. When we look at Osha, who is the good twin that we are supposed to root for, she's making mistakes left and right. And that's totally fine. The problem is when characters do not learn from their mistakes and the plot just takes care of them. Osha is so dumb that she should not survive the first episode, given that she stares blindly into fire. Her PTSD, for one thing, is absolutely just all over the place, where sometimes it kicks in when the plot needs it to, and then other times it doesn't. So, yeah. So it's okay for characters to make mistakes, but characters need to learn from those mistakes. For instance, with Soul being all like, oh, you know what? Like, okay. Let me break down a moment that really drove me batty with episode 2. So Mai, or May, however you want to say her name, the evil twin, is really wily and is able to escape out of all different kinds of situations. Soul knows this by now, thanks to all of the information that's been communicated to him about the murders that have been conducted thus far by her. So it's going to be difficult to catch her. So you would then think that if someone's like, okay, we have to catch someone who's very good at escaping, how are we going to catch her? I've got a brilliant idea. I'm going to talk to her out in the open. Yay. So rather than setting a trap for her within the apothecary where they know that she's going to be and where they can cut off all of the different exits and can have a dozen or so Jedi there to trap her, where they can all use the Force and suppress her, they don't. Instead, he says, I will face her alone in the open where she can escape in any direction she wishes, which is exactly what she does. It's like, dude, you have all the information. You should know how she's going to act. And you even say that you know, thanks to your time with her when she was just a girl. So why then did you make this mistake? This is a stupid mistake. It's because the plot needed him to make that mistake. Then Osha, who literally is just constantly doing the dumbest things. When people say, don't release the dangerous criminal who might kill you, she releases the dangerous criminal who might try to kill her. When they're like, hey, you know what? You should probably keep your droid close. She puts the droid somewhere far away from her. You're like, hey, you know what? Do you know, like, hey, do you know how to use the stun gun? Yes, of course I know. Shoots in the opposite direction. Well, not in the opposite direction exactly, but she shoots absolutely wildly and blindly and can't hit anything. You've been trained in the ways of the Force. Yes, I know how to use the Force. How do I pull stuff to me again? It's like, how, what? She's constantly making stupid choices, stupid mistakes, and never learns from them. If you know that your droid could be very helpful in a situation, why aren't you using that droid? If you know that you could easily stumble and fall on a nice planet, why are you hanging out on a freezing ledge? If you know that you shouldn't release the dangerous criminal, why do you release the criminal? And no, she's not a comedy character. Not at all. She is treated as a serious individual who must be respected and who is talented. And gosh darn it, she is strong with the Force. It's dumb. You can have a powerful character make mistakes. It's one of the things I love doing in my Legend of the Ten Lords series. I like having one of my main characters, Ben, make assumptions that turn out to be false. I like it when he misuses his powers in a way that he didn't mean to. I like it when he does something dumb, because that is human. That is what a teenager with epic cosmic powers would do. They would make mistakes, and those mistakes have horrible consequences. And in my eyes, what helps to make him a hero is that rather than getting beaten down by his bad choices, throwing in the towel, and just being stupid from that point on, he tries to make up for what he does wrong. Rising to the occasions. Doesn't matter how many times. It's not about how often you get hit. It's about how many times you can get hit and keep on going. And so when a character makes a mistake, they should try to learn from it. And you can even call it out where a character's like, oh, okay, I know I need to do it better. And then you show them trying to do better and improving as an individual. That makes the mistakes okay. But when you don't show a character learning from their mistakes, each time then that these mistakes come along and then things just turn out for them, you know that the plot demands for them to somehow survive and make it to the end and be the hero. And it just... If you want actually a really infuriating example of this, you can read the Five Kingdoms series by Brandon Mull. I love Brandon Mull as an author, but the Five Kingdoms was a big mistake in so many ways. The character Jace is a character with so much plot armor. That guy should have died by the second book. He does not deserve to live all the way to the very end, nor does he deserve to get the princess, because he's a jerkwad. He is incapable. He does so many dumb things. He is never helpful. The only thing that makes him an asset to the team is that he has a magical rope that can beat people up. He himself is an idiot. He is incapable. He stumbles his way through the entire story, and there is nothing endearing about him, and never once does he try to improve. Oh, it is so frustrating. And then, for contradictions, with the scene that you've got going on right here, when Soul says, you must not trust your eyes, trust in the Force. Then later on, he's like, I saw it with my own eyes. If I can't see with my own eyes, I will not trust. I must hear. I must talk. I must see. It's like, dude, why can't you just trust in the Force? And there's other times where he's like, waves his hand, and the Force magically gives him all the answers. Why isn't he doing that more often? So he's like, no, I must see for myself. Wave your hand. Let the Force tell you. You've already been able to pull all this information out of a dude by simply waving your hand in front of his face. He's even better than Kylo Ren in extracting information. Why then do you need to go see it with your own eyes when you can trust in the Force? And you told your pupils to not trust their eyes. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, with characters saying you never use your lightsaber unless you're ready to kill. Lightsaber to light the way. You do not kill with steel. Now I'm going to kill with steel. I cannot hit this person. Now I can hit this person. Yay! It's just, what? It's such a mess. And I'm becoming absolutely incoherent. So let's address some of the stuff you guys have put here into the chat, and then move on to the more fun stuff of good book adaptations. And some bad book adaptations. I'm Omega. Honestly, I recommend Kamen Rider W, Shin Kamen Rider, and Kamen Rider ZO if you want an intro. Kamen Rider is absolutely one of those legends and favorites, especially for the Japanese. World building is good, but not even story needed. Yes, and you actually know what, I'll say this, that the world building within the Acolyte is weak. It absolutely is. World building in and of itself is only really interesting to the people who like National Geographic. I like National Geographic. I like world building in and of itself. But the world building only becomes special to most people when there is a good story and good characters to drive that story forward. So he's like Lucky from Kuranger. We need to bend plot armor. Oh, man. I actually have an older rant here on the channel about Ginny Weasley and the plot armor she has. Oh, man. You know, I liked Ginny Weasley until the last book and a half of Harry Potter, and then she became insufferable, and it became very clear that J.K. Rowling really, really, really wanted her to live. Whereas, like, she does everything that should get her killed, and who gets killed instead? Fred. Boo! Boo! So, moving away, actually, and then in switching conversations on over to book adaptations, let's talk Harry Potter. The Harry Potter movies are very much beloved and enjoyed by lots of people. And the first two movies adapt the books so dang well. And they hit all the beats that they're supposed to. There's almost no deviation from the actual canon, and I wish that there was more of those movies. The thing is that most people are not going to sit down for 3.5 hours to 5 hours to watch everything on the screen that happened in the book. Some people are, most people will not. And knowing this, Christopher Columbus, the director for the first two Harry Potter movies, The Sorcerer's Stone or the Philosopher's Stone, and The Chamber of Secrets, did a fantastic job of showing the most important parts of the books in order to communicate the biggest moments of character development for Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and to show the most important parts of the plot so that way you understand Harry is the boy of prophecy who defeated Voldemort while he was a baby. He's been given on over to his abusive aunt and uncle, and they have a horrible child who is his cousin. Dudley is absolutely the worst. And even though Dudley is supposed to have blonde hair, I will forgive the fact that the actor who played Dudley had brown hair because he did such a fantastic job playing an annoying twerp. He did a great job. It was great casting. Harry is contacted by Hogwarts. Eventually, Hagrid has to come and grab him. He takes him on his adventure to show that he is a wizard. He gets to go on the train to Hogwarts, which, yes, in the book, he goes back to the Dursleys for a little while, and then they take him on over to platform 9 3/4. And there he meets Ron and Hermione. He gets sorted. He becomes a seeker. He becomes one of the youngest seekers. And you can just get all of those great moments. You get to see Snape hating on Harry, which is great. And Professor Quirrell being all a nervous wreck. Professor McGonagall being a cat. All of that stuff is there in the movie, right out of the book, right where it needs to belong. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And then we get to The Prisoner of Azkaban and The Goblet of Fire, and everything falls apart. Those are the absolute worst adaptations of the books. Because Sirius, while insane, is not stark raving insane. He is a controlled, murderous insane. He is daunting and horrifying, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. And then when the turnabout comes around and you realize he's actually a hero and a good guy, you're like, oh, like you just heave this sigh of relief. But in the movie, Sirius is like, come out and play, Peter. I will get you. As he's like tossing his wand all sillily about. It's dumb. And then what was up with all of these shrunken heads? Why are we getting any of that? It was comedy that wasn't comical and actually ate up, like when you take it all together, it actually eats up some valuable time within the movie that could have been used to deliver actually some of the more powerful conversations and moments that are in the book. But no, it's not there. And then we only get one briefest of Quidditch matches that's then never really followed up on. Whereas in the third book, it's the one time that Harry genuinely gets to win the Quidditch Cup, the House Cup, or the House Quidditch Cup against Slytherin in an honest setup. Because the other times that Gryffindor wins throughout the series, it is actually never a good matchup, not at all. And Harry doesn't play a central role in that. This is Harry's big hero moment in the third book, and it sets up him having a crush on Cho Chang later on, which was then just absolutely crammed in haphazardly into the fourth movie. God, there's so much wrong. And then why does the movie end with him blasting away stupidly on the firebolt when he should have gotten that so much sooner? It's a horrible way to end the story. It's so much better when he in the book arrives and the Dursleys are all like, well, you're back. And he's like, by the way, I have a godfather who's an escaped convict. And then the Dursleys are absolutely terrified of Harry in the next book because they believe that Sirius is going to come and murder them at any given moment if they mistreat Harry. And that's a fun interaction. It's a way of bringing Sirius more into the story. And that by the time that we get to the fifth movie, which is a better, more faithful adaptation of the book, the on-screen relationship between Harry and Sirius is so minimal that you cannot believe, just on the movies alone, that Harry and Sirius have a good relationship. You just can't. And that's a good adaptation will have the most important parts for the characters and the most important plot points adapted there on the screen. If it doesn't have that, you will begin to lose what made the book so special to the rest of the audience that has come to actually see the movie. All right. So let me slow down myself right there, and let's address what Mibik had right here. Hey there, Mr. Lars. Long time no see. How are you doing today? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I am doing well. It's been a good day. It's been a bit of a busy day, and as I said at the beginning of the stream, I'm going to be going for a visit to my sisters, and so I'm quite busy. I am quickly trying to do this right now, so I'm like, okay, we get the live stream. You guys can have that fun today, and then I'm not just simply kicking it to next week. SB Hazel says, I just arrived. What did I miss? Difference between good adaptation. So SB Hazel, what you've missed is you've missed a bit of a rant for the Acolyte, talking about romance and other such things. We've kind of been bouncing all over the place tonight. But great to have you here with us. Difference between good adaptation, manga, and comics. People who watch anime, some of them will buy manga, but people who watch movies, majority never read comics. And you know what? That is true. And ultimately, the movies and most anime are ultimately nothing more than advertisements for the original source material. Because if people actually go and buy the original source material, there's a better chance that they will not just simply buy one issue, but that they're going to buy more, putting more money into the pockets of the people who publish that, as well as maybe hopefully getting them to buy the memorabilia for those comics and manga. Because there's all different kinds of things that you can buy in terms of action figures, the little pop vinyls, music, posters, all different kinds of things. There is supposed to be a lot of money in the merchandise and memorabilia for comics and manga. And ultimately, anime and superhero movies are meant to be really, really awesome advertisements for people to buy the source material. And if people don't, but they come and they watch the anime and the movies, fantastic, because you should still be raking in some money, and that's the business scheme behind it all. Taking a drink of water. Really good. Roblox is down. I'm late again. But Roblox, you made it. And we are happy to have you here. So yeah, the Harry Potter. So coming back to it, the Harry Potter movies versus books. The first two movies are fantastic, faithful adaptations. Movies 3 and 4 are absolutely ridiculous. Need we bring up, Harry, what? Did you put your name into the Goblet of Fire? Asked Dumbledore calmly. The thing is that when we then get to David Yates tackling the fifth movie, he had to deal with all of the problems created by movies 3 and 4 because there needed to be continuity between the movies. So that way it would make sense to the people who may have only just seen the movies. This then meant that David Yates had to go with a wonkier version of Hogwarts that was not originally planned. He also had to go with a version of the Weasleys' home, the Burrow, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. And he also had to deal with certain character portrayals and haircuts, especially, that didn't make any sense either. Which is why you actually get a whole thing in the fifth movie about Harry finally getting a haircut. Thank goodness. And there were a lot of other little weird things that didn't make any sense that the fifth movie had to subtly explain away why it's no longer there in the fifth movie. The fifth movie, I think, also did a great service to Harry by trying to better explain why Harry is so ticked off in the fifth book. Because Harry's a little jerk. He's a little piece of crap throughout the entire book. He's so hard to root for. You actually want him at one point to, like, you hate Umbridge enough that you root for Harry, but you want Professor McGonagall to slap the law down on his stupid little head and break him a little bit because he's being such a jerk. And he's being absolutely just preposterous. Everything that he's doing doesn't make any sense. The way he's lashing out against other people is just dumb. Which is why, in the movie, to explain the way he's feeling, they bring up how thanks to legitimens or occlumency, with Voldemort and Harry now being far more linked together, Harry is feeling and experiencing everything that's going through with Voldemort. And Voldemort is just pure hatred and vindictiveness. And so that's coming through to Harry, and Harry realizes that there's something happening to him and he wants it to stop. And that was a really good adaptation. It made Harry remain more so the hero, and it helped to explain Voldemort's control over him and actually set up that moment where Voldemort possesses him at the end of the fight in the fifth movie, which is not well set up or explained in the book. And so in that case, the fifth movie is a really excellent adaptation, in my opinion, because it helped to improve upon the characters and upon the explanations within the book. So again, a very good and it also helped to undo some of the stupid stuff from the third and fourth movies. And that's what a good adaptation does. It tries to fix problems. It tries to present the best it possibly can, using the strengths of the medium to enhance the story of the book as best as he can. And so the Harry Potter movies, I believe, are an excellent example in a proper adaptation beginning, a screwed up, messed up adaptation halfway through, and then an adaptation to fix the mistakes of the middle adaptations, and then to try to elevate the books beyond just simply giving you the beat for beat stuff that you can read for yourself. So Harry Potter movies, wild with their successes, their failures, and their advancements. Mivik says right here, yep, a lot of great anime out there, or even just the forms of media, are started from either mangas or books, and sometimes certain book series are made after the movie or anime is made. Yeah, there's especially some of like the 80s anime, 80s and 90s anime and movies definitely went on to inspire the manga later on. They'll be able to extend the lore of the anime or movie with the books, mangas, and comics. And that will then get people to return and hopefully to read more and consume more, because let's be honest here, the publishing industry, the film industry is in it to make money. If they're not making money, then they shouldn't be making those stories. Granted, Hollywood has seemed to have forgotten that, but Hollywood's now bleeding so much money and is losing to a company like Glitch that they need to relearn that. But now then, let me give you guys some examples of movies that I believe are fantastic adaptations, despite the fact that they don't follow the book's canon, which to people who nowadays review and criticize Hollywood, they'd be like, oh no, you can't do that and get away with it. Oh yes, you can. A very good example of this is Howl's Moving Castle. If you haven't read the book Howl's Moving Castle, I highly recommend it. It is a funny book. It is really, really well done. Now then, in the movie, it's done by Studio Ghibli. Man, suddenly my brain went blank. No, it shouldn't happen to me. When Studio Ghibli did the adaptation for Howl's Moving Castle, they made Sophie a really nice person. In the books, Sophie is horrible. She's constantly speaking behind people's backs. She's really jealous of her younger sisters, and yes, she's got two sisters in the book, not just one that you see in the movie. And she's awful to Howl. Howl's awful to her, but she's really awful to Howl. And also in the book, Sophie has magic. She's a witch and doesn't realize it. And one of the things that she does is, because she's so vindictive to other people and she hates other people, while she's working on their hats and she's sewing them, she's muttering about them, and she's actually placing a curse on the hat. And so that way, when someone then gets the hat later on and puts it on, they then become cursed by whatever gossip mutterings Sophie's been saying. Or one time she gets so frustrated with someone, she's like, I bet you're getting married. And so she stitches the person's hat, grumbling about them getting married. The person puts on the hat and like the next day gets engaged, and they weren't even dating anyone. So you have that in the books. Sophie's magical. Sophie is an awful person. Howl's an awful person. The main enemy is the Witch of the Waste. It's not Sullivan. There's a lot of things that the movie just does very, very differently from the books. And yet the author herself said, actually, I really, really enjoyed it. She said that she enjoyed seeing Howl and Sophie rendered as much more sympathetic individuals, and that she felt that it made their relationship a little bit more believable. And by taking away Sophie's magic, it actually makes how Sophie saves Howl, when she's able to save him from his curse, it makes it all the more meaningful because she does it through the power of love, through understanding Howl, through all of the problems that she goes through throughout the movie. She earns her victory by the end, as opposed to some of the shenanigans that happen in the book. And so Sophie Howl become way more sympathetic. Sophie earns her happy ending. The romance is way better portrayed, and there's a whole lot more good wholesome comedy that's in the movie as opposed to the book. The book is way more wry and deadpanned. So if you like that kind of comedy, the book is fantastic. And really, the book is fantastic, but it's so different from the movie. But it works. It works because it makes you still care for these characters. And it makes you care for these characters in a new way. It doesn't take away from the big story of Sophie being cursed by the Witch of the Waste, Howl having lost his heart, the pact that Howl has made with Kelsifer. All of that is still there. It's just that it's now taken from a different perspective. And I would highly recommend reading the book. Because it's such a unique and different experience. So let's see here. Brother, you need your books done to anime. I would love it. If I could have one book of mine transformed into an anime, I want Bleed, Steam, and Steel made into an anime. Oh, that would work so well. When I write that story, when I've been writing that story, and as I've been continuing it on, there's a part of me that just constantly sees it in anime formats. SB Hazel says, I was just going to say the reason I love and am so passionate about indie animation is that they are not in it for the money, and you can tell. And, SB Hazel, I will say this. They are in it for the money in as much as they need to be able to survive to continue doing what they're doing. But yes, they put passion and they put the end product before before making a profit. And I definitely appreciate that with so many different indie animations and indie projects. And as you said, you can absolutely see it on the screen. Hannah Heaven, that's messed up. Yeah, there's some messed up stuff in Howl's Moving Castle. Roblox is down. To be fair, Hollywood would be best slowly dissolving while newer, smaller studios come out that are more in touch with modern viewers, that or get the right people in the right places. Roblox, I absolutely agree with you. That's probably what's going to happen, is that the main studios are going to cannibalize each other. They're right now doing it. And that smaller studios, and especially good independent studios like Glitch Productions, is going to rise up through the ranks, get noticed by even more people, and then have the opportunities to tell even bigger and better stories that reach more people to the point that they can make it. Either they go into Hollywood, which I do not want Glitch to go into Hollywood. I do not want them to go the route of Rooster Teeth. But if those who want to, maybe they can be the new force of change. It will take a lot of time. It's not going to happen next year, 2 years, even 5 years from now. I suspect that we will see a good shift in Hollywood in the 2030s, and that begins in this decade with all the fantastic indie projects that are out there. Mimic says, what, really? Sophie was Regina George before Regina George was born? Damn. Book Sophie was the true evil witch from the Waste, and she didn't even realize it. Yeah, kind of. I mean, the Witch of the Waste is despicable in the book. She's way, way more evil. But yeah, Sophie has her own nasty streak, which is pretty funny. TV account. What about How to Train Your Dragon? Does that count as an example? TV account, it does. But I haven't read the books, so I unfortunately can't comment. If I had read the books for How to Train Your Dragon, I could tell you just how good of an adaptation it is. At the very least, I will say this. The movies are awesome. I love the movies. The movies were definitely very well made. How good they are in terms of an adaptation, I don't yet know. And there are times where the movie adaptation does surpass the book. And I'll give an example of that, at least in my opinion, once I've caught up here with ISO's comment and Mibix. ISO, and that's why I'm learning animation, so I can animate book ideas that I think would be better visually. Yes, there are some stories that are just better visually told. And there's a story that I have in mind called Misventures, which I can write it all out if I want to. And it would have kind of like a more tongue-in-cheek feel to it. Would be like a more tongue-in-cheek take on the writings of Brian Jacks, who wrote the Redwall series. However, I want people to see to at least see images of these characters and to kind of do like a pseudo comic style for that story in the future, because when I think of Misventures, the idea of this mage mouse going on this epic yet ridiculous quest to save his village from being overrun by a gang of hounds, all of that in my head is done in Don Bluth's style of animation, where I'm like, I want the animation from The Secret of Nim, but make it silly. Like, not that the animation is silly, but you take that graphic, gritty animation and then tell a really funny story using it. Have that juxtaposition. That is what I want to do, and that's a story that can really only be told at best with the images. Mimic, I freaking love Howl's Moving Castle. It's so good and wholesome. Also, it was made by Studio Ghibli and the Hayao Miyazaki, and it was made in Japan, so you know it's going to turn out great. Yes, the Howl's Moving Castle adaptation by Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki is phenomenal. And that's actually the movie that I used to get my older sister into anime. I'm like, Debbie, you need to watch anime. She's like, I hate anime. Anime's dumb. And I'm like, you want? And so I introduced her to Howl's Moving Castle. I'm like, you'll like this. It's a sweet little romance. It's not what you're expecting. And then she watched. She's like, oh my gosh, it's so great. I've watched it like every night this week. What other stories are there that you can tell me? And thus began her journey with animation. With anime. ISO, you got to go. Thank you so much for dropping in, ISO. It was great having you here, and thank you so much for your comments. Now then, let me tell you guys an adaptation that I believe surpasses the book. Stardust. if you read the book Stardust by Neil Gaiman, it's a good book. It is a good book, and he tells you this is an adult fairy tale. It's going to be a little bit grittier, a little bit more insane as far as fairy tales go than what you would normally expect. Things are going to get interesting, and 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 then you just go on from there. With the movie adaptation of Stardust, what I really like that they did is that they made the characters way more endearing. Because when you read Stardust, you don't care about any of these characters. They are so annoying. They are so dumb. Their dialogue is weird. Their motivations are really strange. Stuff just happens, and so it's hard to really like some of these characters. Uh, and and the movie makes even the villains endearing. The movie really leans into not taking itself seriously by turning certain characters or certain situations into jokes, and by doing that, even though it takes away from a lot of the fairy tale storytelling and the darker tone that Neil Gaiman was aiming for in his book, by making things funnier, the characters, you like the characters, you're now rooting for the heroes, you love the awkward romance between the boy from the wall and the star that fell from the heavens, and now you actually want them to get together. And then what I really like is that the movie gives a definitive end to the witches by having an epic battle at the end, which was really well done. You do not get that at all in the book. It just ends really abruptly. One of the witches concedes defeat, and we move on with our lives. But in the movie, you have the satisfaction of actually getting a true confrontation with the witches, resolving that loose thread, and you get a true happy ending by the end. Brother, are you serious? Yes, I am absolutely serious. I'm absolutely serious in what I'm saying, that the movie Stardust is better than the book. And that was actually one of the things that was something that I've heard from so many other people. And I even brought that up once at Barnes & Noble, speaking to one of the people working there who recommended that I get the book. And she was like, you know what? I really enjoy the book for what it is. I also really enjoy the movie for what it is. And it's so good. If you haven't seen the movie Stardust, absolutely worth the watch. Brother, your opinion is illegal. I'm going to put you in jail. And I will break out of jail. Omega, have you seen the Hogfather movie? I have not seen the Hogfather movie. So I can't comment on it. And then I'll give you guys another example of a good movie adaptation, despite the fact that it deviates in some cases pretty wildly from the book. Jurassic Park. That is a phenomenal movie for a book that shocked people. The book is so intelligently written. It takes you on an absolutely crazy adventure through this park with dinosaurs as it explores the themes of hubris, of going too far with technology, of not respecting nature, and of just so many things. The movie the movie stays true to the themes of misusing technology, of not understanding and respecting nature. And I think that's one of the reasons why the movie ends up being so poignant by the end, is that it holds true to the themes of the book. But as opposed to the book, it does not kill John Hammond. In the movie, kills the lawyer. The lawyer survives throughout the whole book. There's actually fewer deaths of people in the book, and there are a ton of different scenarios with the dinosaurs that are not adapted in that movie. In fact, throughout the first 3 Jurassic Park movies, they slowly adapted all of these different scenes that were in the book and then put them on into the movies. So the first movie trims a ton of different adventures. It kills some people while keeping other people alive. Ian Malcolm, one of the fan favorites, gets killed in the book, but is, or at least he's left effectively for dead, which means he's going to die, especially since the Costa Rican government comes to destroy the island with all the dinosaurs, which again is not in the movie. Massive changes from the book, and Crichton, the guy who wrote the book, hated the movie because it was so vastly different from what he had intended. He was so angry with Steven Spielberg. But almost everyone universally loves the Jurassic Park movie despite its deviation from the book because of what it did, of how it was able to hold true to the ideas of the book. But it took you on a different adventure with these characters. It made some of them, like John Hammond and Ian Malcolm, way more sympathetic. It made Alan Grant more of a hero. And even though, yes, even though they killed the lawyer who's supposed to go on a real hero's journey in the book, the lawyer was played up for as a good comedic character who you kind of love to hate a little bit before then killing him in spectacular fashion, might I add. So yeah, let's see here. What we get? We've got from Roblox. So again, sorry, I'm Omega. I've not seen the Hogfather movie. Roblox is down other examples. War of the Worlds. Oh my gosh, the War of the Worlds movie, or at least the one with Tom Cruise, is so vastly different from the book, or even from the radio adaptation of the book, which was wild. It got people to actually believe that the United States of America was under attack by actual aliens, and got people in the Midwest freaking out, like running in the streets, going wild, being like, we're all going to die. Oh, it was crazy. Then TV cast. What about Scott Pilgrim? Does that one fit your examples? This is interesting, especially because there's actually 2 variations now of Scott Pilgrim versus the world. So we have the movie adaptation, which follows the main beats of the original comic. I will be honest, I don't know enough about Scott Pilgrim to 100% say definitively how good of an adaptation it is, because I've only really read snippets. I've not sat down to read all 7 volumes. However, from what I have seen from the comics and from conversations I've had with other people, the movie does a fair enough job. A lot of people, though, complained that the movie a lot of the characters were miscast, and that on top of that, you didn't hate Scott Pilgrim enough in the movie like you're supposed to in the comics to then really come to appreciate the journey of self-discovery that he goes on. So I would say that depending on who you ask, they would say that the movie didn't go far enough with the adaptation. Other people would say it did the right thing, where it got all the important beats down and was funny enough and meta enough that fans could appreciate it and that it could win new fans over. Then when we have the newest Netflix series of Scott Pilgrim, that completely deviates from the story. And a lot of people were really upset about that. But the creator was like, this is the story that I wanted to tell. This is an alternate story where Scott might just stand a better chance of actually having a happy ending. And that goes through Scott having to basically face himself, not as a young man, but as an older man. And that Ramona herself must also go on a journey. And so while I love the movie, I thought the movie was absolutely fantastic, I really do appreciate the Netflix series for trying to get a little bit out of the comfort zone, exploring something new in a very Scott Pilgrim-y way. Medic says another piece of media that did an amazing job of doing things differently is the 1993 version of The Secret Garden. It is so good and magical and really perfectly fleshes out the story very well. I haven't read the book for The Secret Garden, but I have heard that, Mimic, about how it is different from the book, and still though delivers on that magical quality. There's this etherealness to watching The Secret Garden that's just, it's mesmerizing, it's haunting and beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I haven't seen a movie in years, but still, the thinking about it gives me some chills. SB Hazel says that sounds like the theme we need right now. Which one of the themes are you talking about there, SB Hazel? But yes, there's a lot of good themes from various stories that we could definitely use more of. Roblox is down. To be honest, a faithful book adaptation of War of the Worlds would be better than any of the adaptations of it that we have now. And you know what? I would agree with that, Roblox. I think that, War of the Worlds hasn't yet had the adaptation that it truly deserves. TV account, I forget, Forrest Gump. I think that counts, especially when you compare it to the movie. I haven't read the book Forrest Gump, so I can't say. The movie is definitely a classic, but it would be interesting to compare that to the original material. I have a question. Why people hate fantasy set in our world like Dresden Files, Harry Potter, Jujutsu Kaisen? To that question, I'm going to say no. I mean, there are people who don't like it, who don't like what we would call urban fantasy. But to be honest, I think that it's like, especially, there are so many people who love the Dresden Files. I haven't yet met anyone who has told me that they hate the Dresden Files. And I'm being serious about that. I have not yet met anyone who has said that they dislike the Dresden Files. Harry Potter, most people enjoy Harry Potter. Those people who especially now don't like Harry Potter normally don't like it because they don't like J.K. Rowling. But a lot of people love Harry Potter and they love the wizarding world that J.K. Rowling created. Jujutsu Kaisen is so incredibly popular right now. People who are hating on Jujutsu Kaisen are mostly hating on it because they want to go against what is considered popular. So I mean, I've already told you that I'm not that big of a fan of how the ending is going for Jujutsu Kaisen, but that's a matter of analysis and taste. Jujutsu Kaisen, though, as a whole, as a story, oh my gosh, fantastic! I love it. So yeah, there you have it. I don't know how many people are honestly hating on these stories. However, I can say this: there are people who do not enjoy urban fantasy because for some people it's really hard to suspend their disbelief about a hidden magical world or a hidden demon world or a world that's just beyond our reach, that's integrated perfectly with our own. And the reason why is because they feel like it's just too much of a stretch to believe that these things exist, to give them any sort of credence, and that it just flies in the face of the logic that they live in. And I've met people like that. There's a lot of people who have a really hard time believing or liking urban fantasy. That happens. And normally you'll find that those are people who consider themselves more realists. But for the most part, urban fantasy is actually very much enjoyed by a lot of different people. Let's hear. SB Hazel says, "Oh, to Matter Lad, he's talking about adaptations right now. He's talking about Jurassic Park." Yep. Jurassic Park, such a good adaptation. Mimics, though I do like how the 1993 Secret Garden still had a few elements from the Secret Garden book, but they really made it their own, and they did a fantastic job with it. Also, the Maggie Smith accent, yes. Maggie Smith, what a fantastic actress. The world will lose a real treasure when she eventually passes on, and she's just so amazing. And she has such a storied history, too. Roblox, World War Z is an adaptation so bad that the original author said he liked it because it wasn't degrading a story, because it was basically its own story with the same name. Yeah, I've heard that. I was introduced to World War Z through one of my best friends who recommended some of the shorter stories in it, and that sounded really, really cool. It would have been neat to have gotten some of those stories actually adapted in the movie, but yeah, the movie was absolutely doing its own thing. Aspie Hazel asks, what does the term meta mean stylistically? Excellent question, Aspie Hazel. So when we talk about meta, meta is like people will say, oh, it's breaking the fourth wall. It's not actually breaking the fourth wall. That's its own thing. When we talk about meta is when a story becomes a little bit more self-aware, when it realizes I belong in this genre, so I'm going to play with these tropes and with these character archetypes deliberately. I will have like in a horror story, I will have a character straight up say, "You shouldn't go to the creepy door, dude, because you don't know what's going to be in there." They won't say, "Don't go to the creepy door, dude, because everyone always dies when they go and open up the creepy door." That's breaking the fourth wall. And meta can do that, but meta wants to basically pull you into a story that can act as commentary on a type of story, on a genre, on a way of thinking. A classic meta-ish story, kind of horrifying, is 1984. 1984 is meta in the sense that it calls out real-world issues and real-world people and ideologies without actually putting you in the real world. It just makes very good likenesses and allegories of what's going on. It has characters discussing very real things that have happened in our world and that could happen in our world. So yeah, that's meta. So one of the ways that you can actually do some fun meta is, again, by characters actually having certain conversations that make them seem like they're self-aware. And this happens all the time in real life where people are like, dude, like, maybe you don't do that. Remember that one movie that we once saw? Oh, yeah. Or do you remember so-and-so? Oh, yeah. No, right. It's probably a bad idea to drink the weird fluid that I found in a stump all by itself. Yeah. Probably because it's moonshine. But yeah, that's meta. Meta is when you very clearly, through your characters or through the events of your book, start to create a kind of commentary for other stories or for things that have been going on. Yes, the Dresden Files is a TV show. Matterlad, honestly, a scene that I wish that stayed in the Harry Potter movies was when Umbridge was being chased out of Hogwarts while being pelted by rocks from one of the ghosts. Yes, the poltergeist, Peeves the poltergeist. I am so upset that he wasn't in any of the movies. For the rumored shows, which will be a reboot for the Harry Potter franchise, there has been talk that Peeves the poltergeist will not be omitted this time because Peeves is a fan favorite. S. Basil, taking care of the environment and how humans abuse technology. Yeah, those are meta. That is actually very good meta commentary. So, for instance, let's go with the Blue Alien Avatar movie. There's very clear meta commentary about how capitalism leads to the destruction of nature, and it's very specifically, very on the nose that way. And that is a kind of meta commentary. And then let's see here. The Secret of Nim. Secret of Nim actually doesn't have much in the way of meta, but there are references definitely to what we do when we experiment on critters and mistreat them. So there's definitely that. But there is a difference between having a moral to your story and being meta. Plenty of stories have morals to them where they're like, oh, you shouldn't do this or you should do that aren't meta. Instead, they are just trying to teach you something through what the characters are doing within the plot. Meta is very clearly setting up an instance where you're like, oh, yeah, I know this thing. Or, oh, yeah, that has relation to this. And now we are getting that kind of played out either through the conversation or through the plots. So yeah, I think in my own stories where I've used meta before, most of the meta that I've done is when I'm writing a story that is an urban fantasy, or urban fantasy / portal fantasy. Actually, I'm getting my own stuff wrong. Maybe I just need to go to bed at this point. We've already been going for nearly an hour and a half. Coming back to my own books, with The Legend of the Ten Lords, which is a portal fantasy story, not urban fantasy, because there is no hidden magical world in our own in this book. Instead, people have to cross in their dreams to the magical world. a lot of the characters will have conversations about shows, books, or movies that they have encountered, and compare that, what they're right now going through in the book, to something that they've already have watched or consumed. And that's something that I enjoyed putting on in there, because we kind of, like, again, we ourselves actually do this somewhat instinctively, where we compare things that we are experiencing to the stuff that we have watched or read. Where I can say, oh yeah, you know what, my experience, like my experience with dating this one person is like right out of 10 Things I Hate About You. Only I didn't get the happy ending. I didn't get the girl at the end. Or I can say that for something like Jungle Cruise, hey, I've actually been on safari, and I did not experience any crazy Germans chasing me in a U-boat. I did, however, have an absolute hunk of a guide take me around from place to place who might have been an immortal being. Don't know. It's kind of like my stories where I tell people I may or may not have eaten cat, rat, or dog. I'm not really sure, but those were definitely not chicken or fish bones in that casserole. And that is a true story. I never asked my hostess what was in the casserole I was eating. I just shut up. It was really delicious, and I spat out those bones. All right. So we've been going on here now for almost an hour and a half. So wrap up the topic of adaptations. Most simply put, and this was something I know that Hannah Heaven had asked about earlier. Ooh, and I see, Hannah, that I didn't get to your question. I'm really sorry about that. So I will first answer one of the things that you asked earlier, and then I'll answer the question that just came off that I missed a little bit ago. So how do you do adaptations? A good adaptation for any medium, whether it be for show, movie, a book, a comic, an adaptation takes the story that people know and love and transforms it through a new medium. If you've been reading a book usually doesn't have illustrations. Some books do, and that's awesome. If a book doesn't, it's the movies or the comics' job to now put images to that story and to bring the characters to life and their world to life in a way that appeals to the audience, where they're like, oh, I did imagine that. I can see that. And I'm now seeing it on screen. That is awesome. And you use the power of that specific medium to tell the story that people know and love and enhance it where you can. A movie or a show or a comic takes a book and brings it to life visually and adds in tons of great elements in the background, and keeps to the most important plot points and character moments to deliver the story in the most efficient, powerful way possible. A book, on the other hand, like if you make a book for a movie, a book can have all of the moments that you get in the movie and then provide important character inner monologues that you do not get in the movie. And the book can also go into more description about stuff that's going on and can even add more scenes to help make better sense of some of the stuff that is happening, which you couldn't do in a show and movie thanks to limited runtime. So whatever medium you are adapting a story into, you think about its strengths, and you want to then play the story beat by beat, important character moment by important character moment, to the strengths of that medium. That is what makes a good adaptation. A good adaptation can also run contrary to the original canon of another story. And it pulls that off the best. When it stays true to the characters and to the themes of the original story, or if it says, look, the original story did have some weaknesses, and so I am going to build on that. I'm going to try to turn those weaknesses in the characters or in the plot and now transform them into actual strengths, something that the people are really, really going to enjoy, while remaining as true to the rest of the story as I possibly can. So that's what makes a good adaptation. Now then, to then come along to your last comment, which I missed. Sorry about that. Off topic. Why do American movies and shows always make aliens portrayed as evil? If I see a real alien, I want to be friends with them and learn about their culture. Hannah Heaven, that is a great question. Not all American stories portray the aliens as evil. And there are some stories where people at first think that the aliens are evil, but then come to find out that they're really good, like E.T., the extraterrestrial. Uh, but one of the reasons why most American movies will portray aliens as evil is because they make excellent villains. They are unknowable. We can't communicate with them. If you're able to communicate with your enemy, it makes it easier to overcome differences. There was crud. What is the name of the movie? There was a really excellent movie that was done a few years back where it's all about aliens coming to Earth and humans trying to learn to communicate with them to avoid an all-out war that will destroy Earth. And it's an absolutely great movie. And unfortunately I'm forgetting the name of the movie, and it's bothering me. But that is a great movie showing how through communication you can avoid conflict. And it's a great way of turning the whole idea of aliens are our enemies and flipping on its head and showing how, again, one of the things that makes the aliens frightening to us as individuals is that they are unknowable and we can't communicate. But so aliens make very easy villains because we can't communicate. They are unknowable. Why are they coming to Earth? They could be really dangerous. Because they are unknowable, you can do all different kinds of things to transform them into monsters to fit whatever scenario you want to make bloody and horrific. And that's pretty much it. Aliens just make really excellent villains without you having to go so much out of your way to explain why they are villains. Instead, you just need to show, and the audience is already, for the most part, built in to be like, oh yeah, yep, they're evil. And I do agree with you. I think that if we were to actually meet real aliens, that we would want to do our absolute best to not take them off, to be friends, so that way we don't actually have to live through a War of the Worlds kind of a situation. But again, aliens just make very convenient, easy to write villains, and that's the point. All right, so that means that we're basically caught up right there uh, with uh, uh, with everything you guys have put there into the chat. We've gone on a little bit longer than I had expected, so it is time for me to do the last bit of preparation to get ready for my trip tomorrow. Everyone, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much for your comments, for your insights, for your questions, for everything you guys have been doing there in the chat, and for your support. It always makes these live streams absolutely worth it. Whether you made it here on time or came in later, I really do appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for being here. And until the next video, y'all, hope you have a fantastic night, morning, day, wherever you are. And choose. Maybe you guys can still hear me. Interestingly enough, StreamYard won't let me leave. So I guess I have now been taken hostage by the stream. If you guys are still here. Well, let's just Wow. Well, I'm back. This is weird. Everything came to a crashing halt. I missed. Wow. I missed all of this stuff.
Did they hear any of it?
I have no idea.
No.
Oh my gosh. Look at all of this. All of these things in the chat that are just wow. No, I didn't get any of this. Oh, holy cow.
Do you think maybe you could do a written post that you could answer most of these if you don't feel like talking?
Wow. I guess I'll have to put something there into the comments. Holy cow. That's a tad bit embarrassing, but it happens. Either Mimic, I got that. If StreamYard's not letting you leave, then you always extend the stream. We don't mind. Well, I do have to get going, Mimic. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Wow. I'm so sorry. I missed out on all of this stuff. My internet, I guess this is weird. My internet crashed hard, but didn't let me know. Everything was running fine on my end, at least supposedly. I was missing everything. Holy cow. Well, well, that's a little bit sad and awkward, but thank you so much for being here. I will try to answer in the comments later on for what's all happened for you guys who wrote here at the very end. Again, thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you next week in the next live stream. Cheers.